Vayeira. Vayeira. At the beginning of the Parsha, 3 angels come to visit Avram Avinu. Rashi says, let's see if I can do this just like this. Vayeira Hashem ba'ilul ma'amrei v'hu yoshev pesach oil moed chamayom v'yosa einav v'yira hinei shlosha anoshim nitzavim olav. Says Rashi, shlosha anoshim echad levasa es Sarah. One was coming to announce that Sarah would have a child. Ve'echad la'afach es Sodom. And one to overturn Sodom. Ve'echad l'rapos es Abraham. The other one went the 3rd day after the Bris Milah to heal Avram Avinu. She'ein malach echad osei shtei shlichuyos. That one, why were there 3? Why couldn't one do the whole thing? A malach is basically a servant, how do you say, an agent. So an agent, this is how malachim work. You and I don't understand these things, but a malach is like he's how do you say, chad pami. He can only do one thing. So that's why there had to be 3. There were 3 jobs to do. There were 3, what do you call it? The problem is if you read Rashi later on in the Rashi, that it says, Raphael, Rosh and Ripui, who healed Abraham, Holach Misham, Lahotzi es Lot, to rescue Lot. Ushane'amar, Vayhi Kahotzisom Osom, Hachoyle V'yoma Himalay al Nafshecha. Okay, so later on we see that one of these malachim actually did 2 jobs. So how do you understand that? Anybody got any answers?
Question again?
Question is,
what 2 jobs was it?
the question is like this. Rashi starts out by saying why there were 3 malachim? Because there were 3 jobs to do. One to announce to Sarah that she was going to have a child. One was Gabriel was to overturn Sodom, to give the punishment to Sodom. And the 3rd one was sent to heal Avram Avinu. And then it says later on Raphael, who apparently can only have 1 job, right? Apparently he's got 2 jobs. Because he goes on later to, to rescue Lot.
I thought Avram rescued her.
Say again?
I thought Avram rescued her.
Well, it seems that Avram rescued Lot, but Raphael, that's what the Pasuk says over here.
Right.
Pasuk says that he was involved in the rescuing of Lot.
But both healing Avram and saving Lot is under the same umbrella.
Okay, why?
It's like Hatzalah, it's rescue. I don't know, it's the same similar.
Okay, so it's like, in other words, what you're saying is when we say that the malach only has 1 job, we don't take it literally. I mean, he has only one department. There's cardiac, there's whatever, psychiatric, whatever. It's like that's his tchum, as they say in Hebrew. That's his sphere of.
His zone is rescuing. So whatever goes under that.
Okay, you could say that. So I saw in here a very nice teretz. I'll look it up for you. One who says it later. Let's look at Lot. Why was Lot rescued in the first place? Let's do some history lessons. What happened when Lot was rescued? What was the first thing that happened after the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah?
He went to the cave with his daughters.
So as a result of the daughters of Lot, who actually are never named, believing that they'd experienced what must have been the equivalent of a nuclear holocaust, and there was nobody left in the world except them and their father, they made the cheshbon that it was mutter for them, not only a mutter, to preserve the human race, to have relations with their father. which they did on successive nights, and that resulted in Moab and what's it called then? Ammon.
Who are those nations today?
What's that?
Who are those nations today?
We don't know who they are. All the nations got muddled up by Sancherib. We don't know who anybody is. We could say that, for example, people say that the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, were Amalek. Why? Because they exhibited a irrational, visceral hatred of the Jewish people. So, in other words, you could reverse engineer it. You could say you have a nation who behaves in such a fashion, they're probably Amalek. But actually, who is who anymore? Sancherib was Mabalbel Kola almost. We don't know anymore who is who. But anyway, let's get back to our question. So Moab, now, it says there, I have a quote here, it says that, where was David Amelech found?
Found?
Yeah, where did it says Matzati David Avdi. This is in Tehillim, Pei Tes. Amar Rav Yitzchak, when it says Matzati David Avdi, Heichen Matzativ, where did I find him? In Sodom. Meaning what?
That if that never happened, he would never have been born.
Where did I? David HaMelech is David is the, and we're going to talk about this, is the line of kingship in Klal Yisrael. He comes from a very strange place. Moab, the incestuous relationship of father and the daughter. That we'll discuss later. But Lamaisa, the only reason that Lot was rescued is because Doris down the line, a king called, not a king, the king, David Melech Israel, is going to emerge from that union many generations later. So in other words, the whole schus of Lot being rescued was was based on the fact that David HaMelech would come for him. Okay? But if you remember David HaMelech, there was a whole suffix where the David HaMelech was muta lavo lekahal. Why? Anybody remembers this? The Gemara says?
People from Ammon might have camped.
Oh, 1 second. Because Moab, it says that the Moavi is never allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael for 10 generations, right? A Mitzri, the Mitzrim were pretty terrible people. They took Jewish babies and they stuffed them in as bricks in their mausolea, right? And Paro, it says, apparently would bathe to assuage his tsaras in the blood of Jewish children. And yet a Mitzri can enter into Klal Yisrael, the body politic of Klal Yisrael, after 3 generations. For 3 generations they marry amongst themselves, and then after that, after they convert, right? They convert, 3 generations of marrying amongst themselves, and then they can become a fully paid up Yid. A Moavi can never, ever become part of Klal Yisrael. Why? Very strange reason. Achelo kidmu belechem v'mayim b'tzeichem mer b'mitzrayim. Because they didn't greet you with bread and water when you came out from Egypt. I mean, hello.
Didn't they give them like skin bags of like air?
No, that was the Yishmaelim.
Oh,
They didn't come out and greet us. So, okay, fine. They didn't rush out with, espresso and cheese Danish when we came out of Egypt. Hello. What? That's worse than the Mitzvah. So what's the answer to that? The Ramban says this. The reason what they were possible to enter into Klal Yisrael is because they lacked the fundamental quality that a Jew has to have, which is what? Hakaras HaTov. Who were these people coming up from Mitzrayim? The progeny of Avram Avinu, the great-grandchildren of Avram Avinu.
Some of the same people.
It's Hakaras HaTov doesn't. If you know that your grandfather got a big, was starving and somebody comes and feeds him and you meet his grandson, you don't feel like Hakaras HaTov. If it wasn't for your grandfather, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for Avram Avinu, Lot would never have been rescued, and therefore, and the fact that they didn't recognize the good. So, but again, I could ask you, what's so bad about not having a Hakaras HaTov? Why is Hakaras HaTov something that postles somebody to come into Klal Yisrael? Says in the Novi, Atem Eidai, you are my witnesses, not the well-known brand X called the J Witnesses. That's where they get it from. Atem Eidai, you are my witnesses. The Klal Yisrael are the witnesses of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's our job in the world, to testify to the fact there's a God. Now, when a person, let me put it like this, it's not atheism that leads to the lack of gratitude. It's not that a person doesn't believe in God and therefore he has no reason to be grateful. It could be that way, but the reverse is also true. if a person doesn't feel he's being given a gift, he'll never bother to look for the source of that gift. If a person feels that every kol neshima, every single breath he takes, that it's a gift to him, then he's going to say, where am I getting this gift from? This was Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu looked into the Bria and he saw a bira dolekes. We spoke about this. Like a palace ablaze. It can't be. He saw that everything, his breath, every breath I take, to paraphrase a well-known song, he realized, he said, so in other words, if a person doesn't have hakaras hatov, the natural outcome of that is atheism. I don't feel I'm getting anything. As they say in Hebrew, magiyali. It's supposed to be like that. It's passion. So if I feel that, so the Jewish people are, the word, we talked about this before, I think, the word Yehudi, where does that come from? Yehuda. Yehuda comes from the root lahodot. Lahodot has two meanings in Hebrew, which is one,
Thanks.
and two, admit. What's the connection between admitting and thanking?
Admitting he did something for you.
Oh, truth. In other words, a person gets his paycheck at the end of the month. What does he say? Thank you. That's not thank you. Person gets his paycheck at the end of the month and he gets a $500 bonus. Thank you. That's a real thank you. The real thanks is based on the admittance that I don't deserve this. There's a lot of magi. It's a lot kommt to me. It's not coming to me. So therefore, the job of the Jewish people is to recognize there's a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world. It's impossible to be a Jew unless you have that midah of a Kodesh Hatov, because that's our job. If you don't feel you're getting anything, if you can't recognize the gift, if you're not modeh, if you're not a Yehudi, I'm sorry, the apostle, you just don't have the, and that's why Moab was never allowed to enter into Klal Yisrael. Parenthetically, you guys are going to be looking for wives pretty soon, right? So parenthetically, we could say if the midah that apostles a person from marriage, right, is what? Lack of kafui tov. So then, what is the greatest midah? That means the apostle to shidduchim. So then, if we swap, right? Etzeluma says, so what's the greatest thing to look for in a spouse? Hakaras hatov. Hakaras hatov. If you want one midah to look for in a girl, and she should be looking in you, is hakaras hatov. Somebody who has hakaras hatov is the easiest person in the world to make happy. Somebody who's everything you do is say, yeah, it's very nice, but it's not really what I want, you know. He's very nice, but he's not really intelligent enough. You know.
What do you mean by hakaras hatov?
It means hakaras hatov means recognizing the good. It's interesting. In English, we have the expression gratitude and ingratitude. In Hebrew, there are really three positions if you think about it. There's the tov. There's the hakara of the tov. You recognize the good. Or there's the kafui. Kafui means what? To cover it over. Foot. To deny its existence. Kafui. The good exists. The question is, will you recognize it or will you cover it over? So
I'm gonna add that. I have to create a list of like qualities.
okay, but that should be at the top of the list.
100%.
Rabbi, I don't know if saying thank you is admitting that I don't deserve.
A real thank you is a real thank you. When a person says, we say thank you all the time. Thank you very much. You know, you send an email. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Like the bus driver drops you off, you say thank you, like you really like thank you for driving me.
Okay.
It's not that I don't deserve to be dropped off.
No, thank you. You did something for me. No, all right. Thank you for doing me a chesed. Thank you. You know, like.
What does that mean? What does that mean when you say the person doesn't deserve it? Does it mean he doesn't deserve it?
It's not muvan me'ilav. It's not axiomatic that I should have this thing. If a person, it's axiomatic to a person that this is the way the world should be, that I should be able to breathe, that I should have food, that I should, you know, if those things aren't things that prompt in me a feeling of, wow, I'm getting something here. I'm getting something. Who's giving this to me? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Right. So it's more like you didn't have to do it for me.
Right.
Okay.
What's this all got to do with Moab? So we said Moab is now. Let's go down to David HaMelech. David HaMelech, the Gemara says, there was a whole shaila whether he should have been part of Klal Yisrael. Why? Do you remember this Gemara? Because he comes from Moab. It says, right, Moab can't come into Klal Yisrael. We've just been discussing why that is. Oh, very good. Excellent. Come a bit further forward. Because the Gemara makes a deal. It says, Moavi lo nichnas leklal Hashem. A Moavi cannot become, but a Moavi, yes. A Moavit, Moavis, a female Moavi, who was Rus, right? Remember, from Rus comes David HaMelech. So she can convert, and she becomes part of Klal Yisrael, and therefore, the whole Vikuach in the Gemara, right? David HaMelech becomes Melech Yisrael for one reason and one reason only, because of that Gemara, that diuk in the Pasuk Moavi below Moavis. Now, the whole reason why Moavi below Moavis is because there was a taina. The Gemara says, okay, it's understood that why is it that the Moavim? Because they didn't lo kidmu belechem b'mayim. They didn't rush out with bread and water. That's the men. So maybe there's a taina on the women as well, but they didn't come out. So the Gemara answers what? Pasuk in, is it Mishlei? I forget. Kol kvuda bas melech pnima. Translation: Kol kvuda bas melech pnima. All the glory of the daughter of the king is inwardness. Pnima. This is what we understand. This is the maila of a Jewish woman. It's serious. So it may be the way for the men to rush out with cheese Danish and whatever, but a woman is not expected to go out, and that was the linchpin of the argument by which David HaMelech became Melech Israel. That his grandmother was not tainted with that problem of the lack of a Korasatov, because it is not the way of women. Okay, fine. But now we can answer the original question. You probably forgot what the original question was. What? What was the original question?
How could the mouth do two things?
Yeah. We see later in the Pasuk that the Malachim say to what? To Avram Avinu, Aya, Sarah, Ishtecha. And he says what? She's in the tent. Rashi says on that over there, Sanua. In other words, at the point when the Malachim were sent out, it was not yet Nikba, the halacha, and of course, what we do down here echoes upstairs. There was not a concept of the idea that a woman doesn't have to go out to greet. So it was only when the halacha, so to speak, was kavua, when the Malachim said, "Where's your wife?" and Avram says she's in the tent, and Rashi says Tzanuahi. At that point, it becomes understood that it's the way of a woman is to stay inside, and because of that halacha being kavua Tzanuahi, ishtecha, so that the halacha is therefore kavua. And that goes up to Shemayim, and it means that in Dori generations later on, there will not be a taina against the Rusa Moavis because of what Avram Avinu said. In other words, at the time when the Malachim went out, the halacha was not yet kavu yet. Nobody knew yet. It was not revealed yet whether there was a legitimate taina that a woman shouldn't go out and greet. It's only when it says, "Where's your wife?" and he says she's in the tent. What does it mean she's in the tent? Sanua. At that point it becomes, the halacha therefore echoes down the generations to the point where David HaMelech will say, Psak is Moavi can't come in, about Moavis can come in. Okay? Understood?
No.
No?
No.
Which bit didn't you understand?
What does Sarah staying in the tent have to do with David's grandmother being able to join the?
Anyone would like to answer? I don't mind doing it, but if one of you'd like to go for it, man.
The Avram Avinu saying that Sarah is supposed to be in the tent and is in the tent means that there's a concept of modesty that a woman's supposed to be at home.
Or it's not a taina on her that she
Right.
doesn't go out.
Right. Okay. So that reveals retroactively. That shows that when later on. That shows later on than when
I'm trying to Moab should have went out and greeted them.
That is
The women, it wasn't normal for
yeah.
them to go out and do it, so it's fine.
Okay? Beautiful idea.
Wait,
All right.
So by Shabbos meals, why do the women eat at our table? Shouldn't they like be in the kitchen or something?
But if you go to Moshe,
Yeah, go to Meir.
I mean, all of these things are, like, how do you say? I mean, there's a concept of tznius for a man as well. It's not just women. Women are supposed to be more tzanua. But the reason why we dress in dark clothes is for tznius.
So basically, women these days are not on Sarah's level, basically.
Is anybody on anybody's level? I mean, there's the concept of Yeridus Adoros, that ever since Avram Avinu and ever since Har Sinai, we've gone down, 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 and down and down. There's a famous story between Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky and the head of the Histadrut. You ever heard the story? A very, very, very sweet story. So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zekel Sad Levracha, was flying from New York to Eretz Israel, and because he was very old at the time, they put him in business class. And the rest of the family was in coach, in economy. So the hashgacha would happen that they happened to sit him next to the head of the Histadrut, the Israeli Labor Federation. It's about as left as you can get. Go any further, you'll drop off the end of the world. I mean, it's like that's the left. In those days, I mean, nowadays, left wing's a whole different thing. But in those days, that was like, the hard, verbrennte communist, like the ones who set up the state, who really wanted to eradicate Judaism and put Zionism in its place. So he was sitting next to this guy, and about 20 minutes after they take off, one of the Einiklach run up to Rav Yaakov and saying, Zayda, do you need anything? Okay, he said, no, fine. So about another 20 minutes, another Einikl comes and says, Zayda, can I get you? No, fine. So whatever, so this goes on for about an hour or so. And at the end of this hour, the head of the Histadrut was just like, had it. He said, excuse me, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? Very, sincerely, he was a nice fellow. He said, look, why is it that amongst you religious people, your children and your grandchildren give you so much covered? Why is that? He said, I'm lucky if I get a birthday card from my grandchildren. He said, well, you have to understand, we believe that we're descended from people whose greatness is almost impossible for us to imagine. When I think of my Rebbe, I don't come up to my Rebbe's ankles in his knowledge of Torah, his Midas Torahs, Midas Tovas, his Yerushalayim. Now, if you extrapolate that a few generations back, it becomes almost impossible for us to understand who the Vilna Gaon was, let alone Moshe Rabbeinu. And ever since Sinai, that moment of supernal connection, it's been Yeridat Hadorot. We're going down, 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 and down. So you believe, with the greatest respect, that you're descended from an ape. So why should your children give you respect? You're the other way around. I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say. So you believe you're descended from an ape. So therefore, the further the way away from the ape you are, the more. In other words, that's why you should be giving your children cover, because they're further away from the ape. Okay, let's go on.
And what do you respond?
I don't know.
At that moment, he converted,
No, I don't
fill it
think so.
on,
I
and
don't
kept
think so.
solids for the first time.
People find it very difficult to change their opinions. I don't know. Probably have to. I'm sure you do. Okay, I wanted to. Where are we now? Wow, it's so short a time. Okay. I want to talk about music. Who likes music in this room? Okay, music. Music's a very interesting thing. I once asked Ramesh Shapiro, what the songs of the Levium sounded like in the Beis HaMikdash. And he said, and it's brought his for him, I never found a sefer, but Ramesh Shapiro was a Goen Olam. He said, the closest thing it probably sounded like was classical music. Because why? There's a concept, and here we come back to David HaMelech. The David HaMelech is, apart from being the Melech, the king, he's also Naim Zmiros Yisrael, which means something like the sweet singer. The sweet singer of Israel. And of course, when the Romans captured the Malchus, right? I don't know if we've spoken about this concept. The history of the Jewish people is basically that we've experienced 3 world historical exiles, starting with Babylon, and Parashat Vayeira, Yovan, and Rome. And each of those Malchius snatched the Malchus from the one before. Bavel was supplanted by Porus and Modai. Vashti was Nebuchadnezzar's daughter or granddaughter, I forget, granddaughter. And each of these kingships, these kingdoms, how do you say, they wrest the power of kingship, which is something which exists in the world, the Koach Malchus, one from the other, and the last one on the line is Rome, which is Edom. Now, Rome, the semel of Rome is the chazir, right? The chazir, the pig. The chazir, that's Esau, right? Like Esau, the pig, so to speak, pushes out its trotters and say, "Look, I'm kosher. I've got a split hoof." But of course, he's not. But the idea of the chazir is Tamun, wrapped up in his name, is what's going to happen eventually, which is he will be machzir. Chazir, he'll be machzir. He will return the Malchus to Klal Yisrael eventually. That's what's going to happen. Now, Edom, everything we see in the world now is Edom. When Constantine converted to Christianity, so the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire, which, as somebody once said, was neither Holy Roman nor an empire. The Holy Roman Empire basically splits into the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, which basically devolves down now to the Western society which we live in, which is dominated by Pax Americana, right? The American Empire. So everything we see basically is Edom around us. And from this there will be, David HaMelech will emerge. So what I want to get to is the idea that kingship and music meet in David HaMelech. If you remember, David HaMelech would play his lyre, the kino, to soothe the depressions of Shaul HaMelech. Come with me, this is a little bit of an abstract idea, okay? So, Rudyard Kipling, an English poet, once said, "East is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet." If you think about it, when it comes to music, that's probably very, very bolate. It sticks out a lot, because if you look at Eastern music, it sounds very atonal to our ears. The further east you go, the less you can... Yeah, and I'm sure that if you played Beethoven's Fifth to some Nepalese goat herd, you'd also find that pretty inscrutable. But, in spite of the tremendous differences...
What do you mean by atonal?
Atonal means not the way... Arabic music to us sounds atonal. The reason is because they have things called quarter tones. Right. We have something called the diatonic scale, which is basically 7 notes, and then there's a chromatic scale. But between the half steps in music, there's theoretically, and they exist, quarter tones.
Right.
So we're not used to that. But basically, what I want to get to is all music shares something in common, which is called a scale. Right? We have a scale which basically goes from C to C, and then in either direction. But every scale, whether it's a Western scale or an Eastern scale, the whole idea of a scale is that where does the word scale come from? The word scale.
Something.
Scallion.
Scala. Scala, anybody knows Italian here? La scala? Scala means a ladder. A ladder, the whole point of a ladder is something which connects. No ladder goes up and stops in the middle. The whole concept, conceptually, a ladder is something which connects the top and the bottom. Okay? Now, if you also look at each individual note itself, you'll notice that notes actually connect the top and the bottom. What do I mean? If you look, for example, the best example would be a string bass, a double bass, where you can see the vibrations, the notes themselves are composed of vibrations, or if you look at those things, an oscilloscope, you can see the sine wave. Any note produces a positive and a negative, which is equal and opposite. No note goes up and then stops in the middle. It always, as far as it goes up, it goes down. So if you think about it on the level of the scale, the notes themselves, and internally in the note itself, there's this idea of connection of the top and the bottom. But music also has a connection between the top and the bottom emotionally, which is why when you listen to a piece of music, it has the ability to change your mood. It says somewhere, I never saw the source inside, that music, the source of music is from what's called the Mora Shchora. Mora Shchora means black bile. The ancients believed that what we call the humors of the human body, humor, not like sense of humor, something called humors, which basically meant the tendencies, what we would call now the elements of personality. One of those things was called the Mora Shchora, which in modern day would be translated as depression. Says that I heard this from Yaakov Hillel, Shlita should be well, that the root of music is in depression. That's where it comes from. And that is why music can talk to you when you're in a state of depression and raise you from that. Because it's as though music says to you, I've been there, I come from there. I know what you're going through. And that's why music has the power to soothe the savage breast. Right? As Navi says. It's like somebody, Rahman al-Islam, let's say that you lost a sibling, God forbid, lo aleinu. The person who is most likely to be able to console, to empathize with that person is a person who'd been through the same experience. Music, so to speak, accompanies us. It has the ability to raise us up because it links the top to the bottom to the top. So here we have music. The scale links the top and the bottom. The individual vibrations of the note links the top and the bottom. And music also links the top and the bottom. David HaMelech is the Naim Zmiris Yisrael, and he's also Melech Yisrael. He's the king. In the Chumash it says a king is defined as Achad Ha'am, literally, Achad Ha'am, the one of the people. The one who is miyached ha'am. He unites the people. Our concept of kingship is usually somebody who gets into power. I mean, nowadays it's very difficult to see kings anyway because most kings are constitutional, they have no power anyway. But if you go to Saudi Arabia or somewhere, so a king is like, I mean, it's interesting. Saudi Arabia is probably the only country in the world which is named after a family. Why is it called? It's Arabia, like Hejaz. But because the Saudi family walked in there and took over, Saudi Arabia. It's like, I don't know if you call it Sinclair, England, or Mitnick, New York, or something like that. It's like, what a chutzpah to actually give a... But that's what it is. That's what kings are. A Jewish king is the reverse. A Jewish king has to unite every single element of the nation because he personifies the nation. He is Achad Ha'am. And that's why now we understand why David HaMelech had to come from such a strange, low place, the lowest of the low. There are 49 levels of Tumah in this world. What's that?
We are on the 49th level.
I'm not sure about that, but for sure, Klal Yisrael in Egypt were on the 49th level. And the gematria of Moab is 49. Moab contains within it all the Memtes Shari Tumah. And David HaMelech comes from there. Because Etzel Umatzeh Osa Elokim. Hashem makes everything equal and opposite, plus and minus, light and dark. The reason David HaMelech has to come from that is he's Achad Ha'am. He has to be able to be connected to the very lowest part. I just want to finish and take this idea a bit further, this idea of, there's a pasuk in that says when the Sodom was destroyed, Vayafoch es ha'arim ha'el, ve'es ha'kikar, ve'es kal yoshvei ha'arim, ve'tzemach ha'adama. That's a pasuk in this week's parsha. Vayafoch, and Hashem overturned es ha'arim ha'el, these cities of the plain, right? Sodom, Gomorrah, ve'es ha'kikar, and the entire plain, ve'es kal yoshvei ha'arim, all the dwellers of those cities. V'tzemach ha'adama, and the plants and the vegetables. That's what we call in English bathos, not pathos. Bathos means what? You suddenly go, somebody opens the trapdoor underneath you. Hello, this Greek pillar. We got the cities, and we got the plain, and we got all the dwellers of the cities, and the plants and the shrubs also got turned over. What's going on here? When you take a seed and you put it in the ground, it grows, correct? No, it doesn't. Most seeds, when you put them in the ground, they rot, they decompose. And at the moment where they reach that level of total decomposition, that's when the life sprouts out of it. There are two ways that Mashiach can come. Be'ita or ba'achishena. In its time, or Hashem can hasten it. Eventually, Mashiach will come. It looks like we're getting towards the end of Olam Hazeh Dika time at the moment. And it looks like that we're going to have that second process, which is a process called Hippuch. Hippuch means when things get to a point where they cannot get any lower. You can't go below 49. Immediately, there's a tremendous flip over. That's how Mashiach comes. Let's say that you're a Martian and you have a super duper telescope that shows you what's going on in the delivery rooms of Hadassah Hospital in En Karim, and you see these poor earthling females writhing around in pain, and everybody's standing around with stethoscopes and white coats, and they can do absolutely nothing for her. And you think, wow, this is terrible, this is such a tragedy, this poor. And then suddenly, from this terrible, terrible scene, this greatest joy, a birth, a baby. This is the process of hippuch. There's no greater hippuch than the extreme physical danger. Just before the birth, where everything looks like the lights have gone out, and the moment of birth, after the moment of birth. That is why it's called Ichvasa de Mashiach, the birth pangs of Mashiach, because that's how Mashiach comes, when things can't get any worse. Now, I want to let you into a secret. One of the names of Mashiach is what? Tzemech. Es Tzemech David Avdecha. Let's read the pasuk again. Hashem turned it over. There was a complete hippuch. This is hinting to David, David HaMelech, who comes from this rescue, who will be he will be the one, the David, who connects the top and the bottom in this process of hippuch, where everything will get flipped over. So what did we say? Let's just sum it up. David HaMelech, apart from being the Melech who is Achad Ha'am, who has to unite all the different levels from the top to the bottom of Klal Yisrael, is also the Naim Zmirot Shal Yisrael, is the sweet singer of Yisrael. He personifies music. And music is this idea of the connection to the top of this flip, that it's possible to happen in the event that things don't get gradually better and better, which they certainly don't look like, certainly if you read the news at all. But things, and maybe, gentlemen, that's a reason we should have tremendous optimism. The worse it gets, the better it gets. Because 49 is the maximum. I just want to end with one thing, that it says that, Bilam was brought in to curse Klal Yisrael. And it says, the Gemara says, all of his brachas turned to Klalos afterwards. They went back to Klalos. Except for one. Ma tohu alecha Yisrael. The Olim of Klal Yisrael, the tents of Torah, are the only place which are immune from the Mabul, from the Klala, from the Nois Moab, the daughters of Moab, who are walking the streets of our world. I don't need to go into details. We're in a generation of tremendous challenge. 100 years ago, the challenge was the isms, the atheism, Zionism, the communism. The challenge is nobody's interested in isms anymore. Now it's Panos Moach. Now it's the flagrant, the total unbridled physicality, which has reached the point. But the optimism we have to have is that things will get to a certain point where they cannot go any lower, and immediately, like a birth, when Mashiach comes, everything will be turned in an instant. Mamish in a cheref ayin, to the greatest joy. Have a wonderful Shabbos.